Every green plant around you operates as a highly efficient solar-powered factory. Using microscopic internal processes, these plants capture light from the sun and use it to build the energy-rich molecules that sustain almost all life on Earth. In biology, we define photosynthesis as an anabolic, physicochemical process. For your WBCHSE exams, you need to know this specific equation. 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combine with 12 molecules of water in the presence of light to produce 1 molecule of glucose, 6 molecules of oxygen gas, and 6 molecules of water. Looking closely at the reactants and products, we can see this is an oxidation-reduction or redox reaction. The blue highlights show oxidation. The water molecules lose hydrogen to become oxygen gas. The orange highlights show reduction. The carbon dioxide molecules gain hydrogen to build the complex glucose molecule. The plant takes volatile, temporary solar energy and locks it into stable chemical bonds. That single redox reaction is the mechanism plants use to manufacture their own food. This dashboard shows the 4 external variables that dictate how fast the plant can produce glucose. The plant requires adequate light intensity, sufficient carbon dioxide concentration, available water, and an optimal temperature range, specifically between 25 and 35 degrees Celsius. In 1905, a scientist named F. Blackman observed that if a process depends on multiple factors, the rate is limited by the slowest one. If water levels drop, that single deficiency dictates the speed of the entire system, even if light, carbon dioxide, and temperature are perfectly optimized. We can measure the efficiency of this gas exchange using the photosynthetic quotient, or PQ. This is simply the ratio of the volume of oxygen released to the volume of carbon dioxide absorbed. For plants producing glucose, both volumes are equal, giving us a PQ value of exactly 1.0. Because the factory only runs as fast as its weakest link, consistent glucose production requires a careful, continuous balance of these environmental factors. The production process happens in 2 distinct stages inside the chloroplast. The first is the light phase. This begins in the stacked structures called grana, where photons hit the green chlorophyll pigments and excite their electrons. That trapped light energy is used for the photolysis of water, also known as the Hill reaction. The energy splits water molecules apart. The oxygen gas is released as a waste product, while the hydrogen ions and electrons are kept inside the chloroplast for the next steps. Alongside splitting water, the plant performs photophosphorylation. It takes a molecule of ADP and a free phosphate and uses the light energy to bind them together, creating ATP, the primary energy currency of the cell. The light phase captures raw solar energy, uses it to split water, vents the oxygen, and packages the remaining energy into chemical batteries, like ATP and NADPH. With those chemical batteries charged, the ATP and NADPH move into the surrounding fluid, called the stroma, for the dark phase. For your exams, remember the dark phase, or Blackman reaction, does not require darkness. It is simply a temperature-dependent stage that doesn't need direct sunlight. The exact chemical pathway of this phase was mapped by Melvin Kelvin, who identified the specific sequence of reactions now known as the Kelvin cycle. In the Kelvin cycle, the plant takes carbon dioxide from the air and uses the energy from ATP and NADPH to fix that carbon onto an existing 5-carbon compound called RUBP. Through a series of enzyme-driven steps, the cycle builds and eventually spits out a complete 6-carbon glucose molecule. Let's test your active recall. Based on the chemical reactions we just covered, where does the oxygen released by plants actually come from? Does it come from the carbon dioxide or the water? It comes from the water. The oxygen is liberated during the photolysis of water in the light phase, well before the carbon dioxide is even used. The assembly line of the dark phase depends entirely on the batteries charged during that first step. If we zoom out, this entire mechanism operates in direct opposition to cellular respiration. While photosynthesis stores energy, consumes carbon dioxide, and releases oxygen, respiration breaks down that glucose to release energy, consuming oxygen and venting carbon dioxide in the process. This complementary cycle maintains the strict balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. It is the primary source of food production, serving as the absolute base of every food web on the planet. This final summary graphic provides your exam cheat sheet. The light phase happens in the grana, uses water and light, and produces oxygen and ATP. The dark phase happens in the stroma, uses carbon dioxide and ATP, and produces glucose. By understanding how the light and dark phases connect, you know exactly how plants translate sunlight into the chemical bonds that keep the Earth alive.